Deputy Catherine, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you, and I have 4 particular areas I want to touch on, essentially, and I'd like to welcome everyone. And obviously it's a good opportunity to address some of these issues. In relation to, I want to touch back on the misclassification of staffing to begin with. I mean, we know that in terms of employee-employer, there's a power differential. And I know, and we know that SIP2 and the NUJ were very active on this for a very long time, and it went on far too long. By virtue of the fact that the people were miscalculated or misclassified in terms of their employment status, there will be an obligation to pay both employer and employee PRSI contributions. There will be people who have lost out badly on, for example, pensions, on as Deputy Carty made the point, things like maternity leave and things like that, that there may well be liabilities and there may well be other actions taken as a consequence of that.
Deputy Murphy, if you wanted to run your camera just on the break there, it went off.
Oh, sorry, so it did. Can I just ask, I mean, I know this is not the first time that there has been this kind of an issue in RTE. It happened in the late 80s as well. Can I ask where the accountability is going to be here? Is that something that's going to be factored into this? It's already known that there is a significant number, about 80 people, who have had their employment status changed. Why is there no commitment to dealing with the other issues other than revenue and the PRSI issues? Why would that not be automatic when they were treated in this particular way? But where is the accountability on this? Will the person who, or the people who decided that this was the employment status, that was going to be offered to them, without understanding that this was, really bogus self-employment, is there going to be accountability on this?
Are you addressing that to Ms. Forbes?
Deputy, sorry, my speaker was off. Good morning, Deputy. I think the first thing to say on this, Deputy Murphy, is that I really do not agree with the statement that RTE has been involved in bogus employment practices. I agree that changes happened to employment legislation that perhaps were not kept up to date. And I think, as I mentioned to one of the earlier speakers, we're dealing with legacy issues here for many, many years. The important thing is that we come to resolution on this, which we're working through a very complex process here, through both Evershed's revenue and scope. So, we are committed to working through that. And the important thing as well, Deputy, is that they put the measures now put in place on a go-forward basis are to ensure this does not happen in the future. Yeah,
can I just stop you there, because I have very little time. I'm taking it that you don't see that accountability. You're talking about legacy issues and things like that. I'm going to leave it at that, but I've got to say I don't accept that it is not bogus self-employment. Because their employment status was changed, there's a scope review, there was a revenue payment. I don't know what you would call it. And I would say that if another semi-state company, for example, was in front of a prime time investigates or some other really superb thing that RTE do, and I would acknowledge that, things like this crimes and confessions, things, really good programming. But if another semi-state was in front of and a program was done on them, and this was the profile, I think they would be held to account. And it's our obligation to hold you to account on this. And I'm going to leave that at that, but I'm not hearing what I wanted to hear in terms of accountability. Can I just move on, Ms. Forbes, to the issue of the player? And I mean, obviously there has been a significant change in how people consume their content. And I would say that that is far more likely, and it probably ties into the number of non-TV households. And a lot of that's got to do with people on struggling with cost of living, cost of putting the roof over their heads, all of that kind of thing. And particularly, it particularly will be younger people that will fall probably into that category. The player, how much have you spent on the player in terms of getting it to where it is at the moment? Do you use it yourself? Because anyone that uses it, I mean, there's an ongoing kind of discussion, and I've used it myself and I've given up on it on several occasions, because all you get is ads and then it falls, it drops out and things like that. Are you satisfied with the player as it is at the moment? And if not, what kind of investment will be put into that?
You're right, Deputy, in saying that the player is becoming, I suppose, a preferred viewing option for many younger audiences, older, across the board, and we've seen huge increases in it. I take your point that there's been issues, and I am very committed to doing as much as we can to iron out those issues. Advertising is, I suppose, a fact of life in our world, and advertising is something that has to be facilitated, I suppose, within that environment because of our remit and of our objective to commercialize our output. I think for us in the future, we've allocated monies to continually upgrading the player. Now, I'll be honest with you, we don't have the resources nor the money of some of the streamers or the likes of Channel 4, where they have invested significantly in this. But in terms of our future proofing going forward, we want to spend more. We are spending more. It has stabilized significantly in the last year, recognizing we have work to do. But it's a very important focus for us for the future.
Ms. Forbes, could you tell us how much needs to be invested in it to make it fit for purpose?
I don't have that number to hand, but it is significantly more than we're spending now over a number of years.
Yeah, can you come back to us with an estimate of what is required?
But I take your point, and what we want to have a world-class product, and it's what's expected now. And also, I think I'll just point out, Deputy, one thing that is, I suppose, quite different from us compared to a Netflix or an Amazon Prime is we're dealing with the complexities of live and on demand, and that does require quite a different, I suppose, investment compared to somebody who's not taking advertising or is not taking live.
If you can just come back to us on that. And in actual fact, I would say that the area I represent, which would be described as a commuter belt, although people don't feel like they're economic units, but are just people who are on the move the whole time. That particular area is, and in fact, I would say is probably well represented in the non-households that have a TV, and in fact, you'll find it in
2 minutes left,
younger age cohorts as well.
2 minutes.
I think it's a missing area in terms of the kind of coverage. For example, we're not Midlands, but we're classified as Midlands. We're not Dublin because we're not Dublin. And I think that is a missed opportunity, and probably there's a whole lot of areas that are missed as a consequence of that, but that's just the point. Can I just agree with my colleague, Deputy Hurricane, in relation to relation to the gender? I think the lack of transparency hasn't been good from the point of view of RTE in terms of being able to give us that information. I think it's important information. Obviously RTE are setting the standards for other people, and I think that is a standard in terms of transparency that you are, you're falling down on in terms of not being able to give us that information. I just want to agree with on that. In relation to the orchestra, will you keep the funding that has been provided to RTE that covered the cost of the orchestra now that the orchestra is being obviously moved to the National Concert Hall?
If you remember, when we commissioned a report on the future sustainability of both orchestras a number of years ago with Helen Bowden, and the outcome of that was the recommendation that RTE could no longer fund both orchestras and it was decided by government that additional funding will be made available for the NSO to become part of the NCH. So yes, that money will remain with RTE, and additional funding has been provided for the transfer of, if you like, of that orchestra to the National Concert Hall, which will actually take effect from Monday of next week.
So you get to retain that money, so that's an increase for RTE in your budget, because you do something you don't have a liability for.
Well, effectively, it was identified as a cost saving as we were planning our 2019-2020 plans.
Thank you, Deputy.